Some fears come from what you see. Others come from what you hear. But this one comes from something far, far worse. It comes from recognition. Before we begin, if you enjoy slow, disturbing horror stories that get under your skin, do me a favor and subscribe now. Because this story is about that exact moment you realize something has been there longer than you have. It didn't feel like fear. That's what confused him the most. There was no overwhelming sense of dread, no heart-pounding panic. Just a subtle, persistent discomfort. It felt like standing in a room where you know someone else had been just moments ago. You can still feel the warmth they left behind, the faint disturbance in the air. Except the room was empty. Completely, utterly empty, or so it seemed. He'd walk into his living room, his kitchen, his own bedroom, and the feeling would just wash over him. A quiet sense of presence. He'd check the locks, peek out the windows, even look under the bed like a child. Nothing. But the feeling remained a silent hum just beneath the surface of his perception. It wasn't threatening, it was just there, an unspoken companion in his solitude. At first, he dismissed it as his mind playing tricks, the product of living alone for too long. But the feeling was too consistent, too specific. It was the feeling of not being alone when you are supposed to be. And that subtle contradiction was beginning to wear him down day by day, moment by moment. He started noticing gaps. Not missing objects, nothing tangible like a misplaced book or a moved chair. No, this was far more unsettling. He started noticing missing space. Corners of rooms that felt occupied, doorways that felt watched. He would walk down the hallway and feel an invisible weight in the air just to his left, forcing him to instinctively give it a wider berth. It was as if a person were standing there, silent and still, and his body was reacting to their presence before his mind could even process it. There was a particular spot, right at the top of the stairs, that felt the most dense. It was like a column of heavy, static air. He found himself avoiding it, taking the long way around through the dining room to get to the kitchen. Nothing ever moved. That was the rule. Movement would have been easier in a strange way. A flicker in his peripheral vision, a shadow darting away. That would be a classic haunting. He could deal with that. He could call someone, sage the house, even run. But how do you fight something that doesn't do anything? How do you confront an absence that feels so incredibly full? It was a constant, silent pressure on his reality, bending the space around him without ever revealing itself. The emptiness was the monster. He learned the rule without ever being told. It was an instinct, a primal understanding that settled deep in his bones. The rule was simple. Don't stare too long. Don't point. And most importantly, don't acknowledge. Don't let your eyes linger on that empty chair that feels so full. Don't motion towards the dark corner of the ceiling where the shadows seem to gather a little too thickly. Don't speak its name because it didn't have one. He understood, on a level he couldn't articulate, that breaking this rule wasn't about provoking an attack. It wasn't about something bad happening in the physical sense. It was about something far more intimate. Acknowledgement was permission. It was an invitation. To acknowledge the presence was to validate it, to give it a foothold not just in the house, but in his mind. It was like seeing a crack in a dam. You know that pressing your finger against it won't break it open, but it will confirm the weakness, make it real. And once it's real, the pressure will do the rest. So he lived by the rule. He looked away. He kept his thoughts to himself. He pretended the suffocating fullness in the empty spaces was just his imagination. He pretended he was still alone. The first mistake happened on a Tuesday night. He was drifting in that strange, hazy space between wakefulness and sleep. His body was heavy, his mind untethered. It was in that vulnerable state with his defenses down that the thought surfaced. It wasn't a deliberate act. It simply appeared. A moment of pure, unfiltered recognition. He felt the familiar pressure in the corner of his bedroom by the wardrobe, and without thinking, the words formed in his mind. There you are. He didn't say them out loud, he didn't even whisper. It was just a thought, a silent greeting. For a split second, nothing happened. The room didn't change. The temperature didn't drop. No ghostly figure appeared. But then, the feeling did change. It shifted. The subtle sensation of being observed, of being watched from a distance, vanished completely. It was replaced by something new, something terrifyingly intimate. He was no longer being observed. He was being included. The feeling wasn't in the corner anymore. It was all around him. It was in the air he was breathing. It was beside him in the bed. He had broken the rule. He had given permission, and now he wasn't just in the room with it. The room was in it with him. Here's the thing you need to understand. It doesn't chase. It doesn't harm. It doesn't even approach. It simply adjusts. After he made the mistake, after he acknowledged it, its nature became clearer. It was no longer a static presence in a fixed location. It had become fluid, symbiotic, so that when he moved, it had already accounted for his movement. When he decided to get a glass of water, the path to the kitchen was already prepared for him. The feeling would recede just enough to let him pass, then flow back in behind him like water displaced by a hand. When he turned his head quickly, trying to catch it, to see something, anything, it was never surprised. Because it wasn't there to be caught, it was part of the environment itself. It was the silence between sounds. It was the stillness in a moving room. He was no longer a person being watched by a thing. He was an object moving through a medium that was aware of him. Imagine swimming in the ocean and suddenly realizing the water itself is conscious, and it knows exactly where you are and what you're about to do next. It doesn't need to attack you. Its very nature is enough to drown you in terror. He started researching, desperate for answers. He scoured forgotten forums and obscure paranormal websites, looking for anyone who had experienced something similar. And he found them. A handful of scattered accounts buried deep in the internet's archives. Everyone who noticed it described the same thing. And it wasn't fear, not at first. It was relief. A strange, profound sense of relief. Like finally admitting to yourself a truth you've been denying for years. The relief of knowing you weren't going crazy. The relief of confirming you weren't alone. That validation, that sense of connection with something unseen, was almost comforting. But that relief never, ever lasted. Because the accounts always ended the same way. Once acknowledged, it never leaves. It doesn't need to. It has been invited in, and it makes itself at home, not in your house, but in your perception. The initial relief curdles into a constant low-grade dread. The comfort of not being alone becomes the prison of never being alone again. Every moment of solitude is stolen. Every quiet thought is shared. The presence simply settles in, a permanent passenger in your consciousness, and that's when he had the final realization. The one that broke him. The presence doesn't want you. It doesn't want to scare you or hurt you or possess you. It's not a ghost with unfinished business or a demon with malicious intent. It wants something far simpler and far more horrifying. It wants awareness. It feeds on the moment your brain stops asking the question, "Is something there?" and starts assuming the statement, "Of course it is." It thrives in that shift, that acceptance. Its entire existence is sustained by the quiet surrender of your mind. It's a parasite of perception. And now that you've listened to this story, now that you're thinking about it, that little pause you just felt, that sudden awareness of the space around you, the silence in your room that suddenly seems a little louder, that wasn't a coincidence. Some things don't hide. They just wait to be noticed. And once they are, they're very, very grateful. If this story made you feel a little uncomfortable, maybe made you look over your shoulder, go ahead and like the video. It lets me know I'm doing my job right. And for more stories that will stay with you long after the lights are out, make sure you subscribe to When Lights Out. Thanks for listening. Sleep well.